going to affect states that took those Medicaid dollars differently than states that didn't. And Missouri is one of those states that didn't. We're joined right now by our folks from the Show Me Institute, Mike Ferguson, who is newly on board over there at the Show Me Institute and who used to host his own radio program. Mike, how are you?
I am doing well, and by the way, we're kindred spirits on the Sammy Hagar thing. I'm just going to leave it right there. I've seen him 3 times, and best front man I've ever seen in country.
I would have to agree with you on that, and I appreciate it, Mike. Welcome to the Show Me Institute. Glad to have you over there. Tell them they got to get that Edlin guy's face off the staff page, though, and replace it with yours.
Oh, well, he's a better-looking guy than I am, but yeah, we probably do need to update that.
Best of luck to Rick in his future endeavors. I appreciate that. Let's talk about health care for a minute. What has Show Me been doing looking at that issue in Missouri?
Well, a couple things. Of course, we do all the research, and we talk about the impact that it's going to happen, but one of the things that Secretary Tom Price is doing that's really encouraging, because I don't know whether his office, sees the future of the vote that's going to happen, because right now it's really questionable whether this thing's going to pass in the House.
Right.
But the Department of Health and Department of Health and Human Services, they're reaching out to think tanks like ours and including ours, and saying, okay, what's your research showing? What's working? And so they are taking the research of the groups on the ground like us seriously, and we are involved in that conversation. As well. So that's what we're looking at on it. And basically, oh man, I can't be mad at you if you think Republicans or Congress should just take this bill and, say it's at least a step in the right direction. And I really can't be mad at you if you say, nope, it's not good enough, go back to the drawing board. It's just a mess. And we know that the Obamacare situation is, there are some people who have benefited, but they've done it at the expense of so many other people, and it's economically completely unsustainable. We've got to do something to make a change. Whether or not this is the right one, I don't know, but there at least are some good things that come out of it. And, Mark, here's one of the things that I would say, if we're going to be encouraged by anything, it's that some of the conversations are switching from, gee, what does the federal government need to, manage and mandate and run for us? At least the conversation on a lot of areas here is, okay, how do we shift some of this back to the states and back to the individual for individual responsibility? Gasp. Can you imagine that? Right.
With the belief that if, the state's got X amount of dollars to do something with, they're going to keep a closer eye on managing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. And also, what Missouri needs is going to be very different than what a New York or a Wyoming or a Mississippi or a Florida needs. So, if you've got people in the state legislature who are answering to people that they see at, chicken dinners on Friday and Saturday night, you're going to get something closer to the needs and the wants of the states and the people. And a top-down approach to healthcare, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work economically, and it doesn't work medically.
Yeah, I've looked into some of the things that they're trying to include in this bill, and nobody's got a clear picture of it, I guess, what the final bill might look like that they're going to vote on here. But I do know that it dealt with block granting some Medicaid funds back to certain states.
Yeah, and that is also part of phasing out the Medicaid expansion. Remember, before Obamacare came around, Medicaid was pretty specific. It was for low-income families. It was for pregnant women. It was for children. It was for people with disabilities. And then Obamacare comes along and expands that to anybody who is under 65 and making about 138% of the poverty line, I think.
Right.
And so, this applies to the people in the states that opted into the program. So those are the states you just mentioned a couple minutes ago. Those are the states that are starting to feel the really pinch on this, because about 11 million people signed up for Medicaid under that expansion.
Right.
That's one of the reasons premiums went through the roof.
Well, it's another reason that they've sort of falsely inflated the impact that Obamacare had on the uninsured, because they add those numbers into the mix and say, oh, we've given health care to 26 million people. Well, not really. Your expanded Medicaid, because you lifted the threshold to qualify for it, enveloped a much larger group of people who otherwise might have gone somewhere else for their health care.
Well, and not to mention, also included in that number are people who were priced out of their current plan and forced out of a private market plan, and they basically were forced into the exchange system. so there were some people who didn't want to be there that had to be there in the first place.
Yeah, it's a great point. We're talking to Mike Ferguson from the Show Me Institute, showmeinstitute.org. You can go and look at some of these issues. Mike, let me switch gears here real quick. In the state Senate in Missouri, they are debating how to expand charter schools in Missouri. What do you know about that?
Well, it passed the House pretty narrow. This is interesting, Mark, because usually the issues come down to Republican versus Democrat, but what we're seeing here is more of an urban and maybe suburban versus rural type of thing. Matter of fact, my other project is Missouri Viewpoints, which airs here on 97.1 on the weekends.
Right.
That's the topic this week. We've got a Republican state representative, Nate Walker, who is among those absolutely opposed to expanding charter schools, because what's happening is, you look at Normandy and all the struggles St. Louis public schools have gone through, Riverview Gardens and everything there. Parents were saying, listen, you can talk about trying to fix the system, the public education system, all you want, but in the meantime, we've got children who need a fighting chance at life, and so we need to find other options. Well, we see that some of the charter schools have worked well, some of the charter schools haven't, so they got shut down, which is kind of the idea. But what's happening now is you've got people saying, hey, there are also failing school districts in medium-sized cities and in some rural areas. Now, there's also some great school districts in those areas. Maybe we should at least allow that as an option statewide. And I don't know that it's going to make it through the state Senate, but it did make it through the House. And all this would do would simply allow the same process that allowed, schools like Confluence Academy and KIPP and some of the others in St. Louis, that would allow that process to happen statewide if there's a school district where somebody says we need to go in and provide another option. And that's really all that this bill does. It's about halfway home. We don't know what's going to happen in the Senate. If it makes it to Governor Greitens' desk, we really don't know what he would do with it as well. But I love the fact that we're at least talking about, okay, let's give communities the freedom to at least have another option.
So when can people listen to Viewpoints this weekend?
I think I am on at Dark 30, I think on 97.1. I think I'm around 5 or 5:30 or something like that on Sunday.
Sundays, all right, good. That's great. Mike Ferguson, great job, my friend, at the Show Me Institute, showmeinstitute.org. Have a great weekend.
You do the same, Mark. Thanks a lot.
We'll talk soon. Thank you. Glad to get Mike on here and welcome him to the team over there. They've got some very knowledgeable people at Show Me that help us parse through some of these statewide issues. And healthcare.